I reject the idea that it's a cult. I reject the idea that...
You reject the idea that the GOP is a cult?
Yes. I reject the idea. I think it's all about the two-party game, and it's all zero sum, and they want to win, and that is the only goal in two-party politics is to win.
Then they wouldn't nominate Donald Trump.
Mehdi Hasan was a guest on Chris Cuomo's show to talk about Donald Trump. And what's really interesting about this clip is it was recorded before the election in 2024. This one goes back a little bit. Biden was still in office, but I had not seen this, and I wanted to share it because I think it's fascinating. Mehdi Hasan and Chris Cuomo make some predictions and voice some opinions about the prospect of a second Trump administration and the authoritarian tendencies and some other aspects. And I just thought it was really interesting to go back and compare those pre-2024 election predictions by Chris Cuomo and Mehdi Hasan compared to where we are now.
One of the sticks I've been beaten with recently is that I underestimate dangerously the dangerousness of Donald Trump. My suggestion is pretty simple. I'm not going to argue that he doesn't say what he says. I'm going to argue that it doesn't mean what it would if you said it. Because this man is a lie machine and a hyperbole machine. And you have to look at it that way, that the idea that he's a man of great vision and strategy who wants to become an autocrat and is going to put people around him who can help him overthrow America's democracy, I think is a laughably absurd notion. And the more the left insists on it, the more it makes people think who are in the center, right, that small group, that you guys are exaggerating the problem because you don't have better ideas.
So a couple of things. I'll engage in the substance of what you said in a moment, but let me just question your premise that this is a left critique. I know, Chris, I get it where you're coming from. You have this kind of stick, like you're in the center, there's a right and there's a left, and you're above the fray. That, first of all, that's not true. But where does this left come from? Some of the most eloquent, passionate, and most informed critics of Donald Trump's fascism and assault on democracy are not leftists.
It's true.
Judge Michael Luttig is not a leftist. Liz Cheney, last time I checked, is not a leftist.
True.
George Conway is not a leftist.
True.
All of the former Trump administration officials who've said the man's crazy, he's authoritarian.
General John Kelly.
Leftists, right? So they're not leftists. I don't accept the premise that this is a leftist critique, not at all. In fact, there are people on the left who attack people like me and say you're being hyperbolic and agree with the premise of your statement. So it's not a left thing. Let's just put that to one side. In terms of the substance, number one, let me snarkily say this. Chris, did you think Donald Trump would incite an insurrection and refuse to leave office in 2019, in 2020?
No, but I also wouldn't characterize the behavior the way you did.
You don't think he incited an insurrection?
No, I don't think it was an insurrection. I think it was a riot.
Okay, did you? Okay, I don't agree with that for a second, but let's park that for a moment. Did you in 2019 or 2020 say Donald Trump will refuse to leave office and incite a riot and an attack on the Capitol?
No.
I did. In 2019, I wrote a piece for The Intercept saying Donald Trump is very clear about the fact he won't accept the election result and he won't leave, and people are ignoring this danger. And if this, you know what's going to happen? Violence and rioting. I wrote this in The Intercept in, I think, May of 2019, about 18 months before the election. People said to me, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a Brit. You don't understand American politics. The Secret Service will walk him out. There's no danger here. This is all hyperbole. So my first point, Chris, is forgive me when I hear people say it's hyperbole. I was right then and they were wrong. So maybe we should have a little bit of humility from the folks who say, calm down. A lot of the calm down folks were completely wrong on January the 6th, 2021. That's my first point. And then in terms of the substance, I mean, he is saying this stuff. I agree with you, Chris. He's a liar. He's an exaggerator. I completely agree. He's not a strategist. I don't think you need to be a strategist to be an autocrat, right? I don't think you need that. I think you have autocratic tendencies and instincts, and then it's an issue of whether those around you and the
They usually have a plan, Mehdi, as we both know.
Well, he's got people around him. Have you read the Heritage Foundation 2025 report? It's a pretty clear plan for authoritarianism. Pretty well laid out over multiple pages. But just go back to Trump. Okay, when I say, so a friend of mine said recently, a friend of mine who doesn't want to vote for Biden because of Gaza. So I can't vote for Biden. I said, well, what happens when Trump's president? And they said, well, we'll protest Trump just like we protested him the first time.
But how do you vote for Trump if you don't like Biden's position on
No, they didn't say they would vote for Trump. They said, well, we'll vote for Biden, but they don't care if Trump wins. They're so mad at Biden.
I got you.
They don't care if Trump wins. And I said, well, what are you going to do once Trump's president? You're Muslim. You're going to suffer. We'll protest. We protested the first time. I said, what happens when he puts the military on the streets and they open fire on protesters? Oh, Mehdi, you're being exaggerating. That's too far. Mark Esper, Chris, a man you know better than I do, just went on MSNBC last week and said, he told me to shoot protesters. I said, we can't do it. Mark Esper won't be there next time. Next time it'll be Kash Patel or General Michael Flynn who'll say, sure, boss, whatever you want. So when you tell me like it's hyperbole exaggeration, it's not. He's already said it. He already gave the order to shoot people. We just got lucky first time around that there were a few half-spined conservatives in his administration who said no. They won't be there next time, Chris. It'll be Michael Davis. It'll be Michael Flynn. It'll be Kash Patel. It'll be Sebastian Gorka, who will love it.
So you really believe if Donald Trump wins again, there's all kinds of mayhem, and he is doing everything he can, not just to settle scores, but to turn himself as closely as he can into Putin?
Yes.
I just think this is fascinating. So this was recorded in May of 2024 between Mehdi Hasan and Chris Cuomo. And Chris Cuomo here is basically acting like Mehdi Hasan is being an alarmist. And Mehdi Hasan, it's like, it's insane how accurate, like he is spot on with everything he is saying here. He called it on Kash Patel. They've got military in the street. Not exactly every day opening fire on protesting and protesters and civilians yet, but we've certainly seen plenty of things where ICE has shot people in the head with pepper balls and just done all kinds of extra legal, horrible things to people. So I think Mehdi Hasan is absolutely spot on with these predictions. And Chris Cuomo brings up like they have a plan, and I think Mehdi Hasan nails it when he points out Project 2025. And Cuomo says, well, is Trump going to be surrounded by all these autocrats? And I think this was a kind of an optimistic, wishful thinking that I was also indulging in at the time, thinking, well, maybe it won't be that bad. But what you hear people talk about a lot is the sort of adults in the room. And I think Mehdi puts his finger right on that too. There won't be adults in the room anymore. This is an incompetent narcissist who wants to surround himself with sycophants and yes men and yes women, like Kash Patel, right? Like all of these people that we're seeing. And there are also a circle of zealots, of extremists that do have ideologies, like Stephen Miller, right? That surround Trump, understanding that what they need to do is glaze him to stay close. Trump doesn't want to govern. And they say, that's okay, Your Excellency, we'll do it for you. We've got a plan. We've got a playbook. Smart lawyers and people spend a lot of time thinking on this. We've got a plan. It's all right here. And all you got to do is bless us in there, and we'll take care of it for you. We'll make you look great, and we'll get you your big golden ballroom, and so on and so forth. So while Trump himself, I agree with Chris Cuomo, does not exhibit any capacity for or possession of an ideology in the way that, say, Adolf Hitler did or Benito Mussolini did. He surrounds himself with people who are willing to be sycophantic toward him, who do have ideologies. And the plan was the Heritage Foundation's Project 2026, which they are between 70 and 80% of the way towards implementing. It's basically creating an American monarchy. Now, Trump doesn't want to leave office because it's a pretty sweet deal for him. He's got the hang of it now. He is enriching himself in ways that he was never, ever able to do before. And there's no shortage of corrupt governments and government leaders around the world, like the Qataris, however you say that, that are willing to give him jets. And, it's just like, they're willing to be transactional. The Saudis have a lot of money, right? Great. If it's pay to play, a lot of the world does business that way. And I think Trump's happy as long as he can have that. He doesn't want to leave that, right? And he certainly doesn't want the administration to turn over into more hostile, say, Democratic hands that are going to try and hold him accountable for all this malfeasance. That's why Trump wants to stay in office. The Heritage Foundation and these other ideologues want to transform America into whatever it is they envision it at, whether that is a Christian theocracy, whether that is some combination of white nationalism, of a sort of a technocratic autocracy, an oligarchy. The billionaires in his cabinet directly benefit from not having any oversight and deregulation. That's good for them. So this is a horrible cocktail of where we are now. And I think comparing Trump to other fascists in history like Adolf Hitler does break down when you look at the ideology. There isn't an ideology from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. There is, however, an ideology from all of the people around, like Russ Vought, all of these people around him that are actually tearing out the wiring and firing all the people and cutting all the spending and illegally not processing payments that Congress already approved. And we've got a Republican legislature that is limp enough that they're allowing it to happen. That's supposed to be a check on executive power, as is the Supreme Court, which, I don't need to go into that whole episode. You know the numbers is 6-3. So I just think it is really fascinating to listen to Chris Cuomo and Mehdi Hasan talk about this stuff. And I've got to say that it is uncanny watching Mehdi Hasan call it with such incredible accuracy. Anyway, there's more of this. Let's watch more.
Why would I not believe that? Every bit of evidence we have, public and private, suggests that is his plan.
Because the institutions are too strong. And the rest of because the institutions are too strong, and because the
institutions
the
are a joke
branches
in
of
this
government
country.
are too strong.
Which institutions? Is this the Supreme Court that's now running down the clock on his behalf so that he never faces a single federal trial before the next election, which in any other country would be laughed at? Chris, let me just bring you the immigrant perspective here. The rest of the world thinks we are a joke when it comes to our institutions. In Brazil, Bolsonaro didn't incite an insurrection. He simply questioned the results. The Brazilian judges banned him from running for president again until 2030. We have judges in this country who, by the way, are appointed by the president. Absurd system. No other country does it this way. They have independent judges, not party-nominated judges. Our judges, 3 of whom were appointed by Trump, are now running down the clock on his behalf, this ludicrous decision to hear his immunity case at their own slow pace. So no, I don't believe the institution is strong enough. I believe we dodged it in January of 2021 by the skin of our teeth, by people like Raffensperger happening to be in the right place at the right time, by the Supreme Court in that moment realizing that none of the 60 cases, including the Pennsylvania case, were worth hearing. Next time around, it's a different ballgame. You've seen the Republican Party, what they've been up to in recent years. They've purged any of those folks from 2020. Raffensperger, thankfully, did just get reelected in Georgia. They weren't able to get rid of him. But in other places in Michigan, they've carried out purges. And this time round, they're much better to take on our institutions. Which institution? The House? Chris, the Republican Party in Congress is a Trump party. You know this.
Mm-hmm. It has been to date. There are different ways to look at it. It's certainly as a matter of degree. How so? Well, when you listen to General Kelly, now, do I wish he had been saying these things while he was chief of staff? Absolutely. But even with a pretty weak, Esper, I would put at the stronger scale of this, although he made the decision to work for Trump. He had that good explanation of, I knew this guy was going to have to need good people around him. Because, all right, I'll give it to him. But that could break either way. Out of conscience, you could also say, no, I won't work with this guy, and let me tell you why. But that with a pretty weak lineup around him, there was a lot of pushback. And the theory from even John Kelly is the stronger people are around him, if you had regular people who were around other White Houses that he had interfaced with, they would have been a much bigger check. So even with these weak people were telling him no all the time, and he listened to them, because as long as it's good for him somehow at the end of the day, he goes along with it. He doesn't have what most people who want you to shoot at protesters have in their heads about why. And that for him, it's really that he wants to win. He wants to stall these lawsuits. And
Agreed.
It's basically the end of it.
Here's where we agree, is that the one saving grace we have with Trump as the autocrat in waiting is that he doesn't have an underlying ideology of any kind. He's not Orban, Putin, Erdogan, MBS, Modi in that shape or form. He wants to be liked. Right? He wants to save his ass right now, right? In terms of the legal
and
situation.
Be liked. He wants to be liked, Mehdi. If you were to go on TV tonight and say,
he's not running a campaign that implies he wants to be liked at all. He's running a base campaign. He wants to be liked by his base. He's given up on any kind of. In 2016, he was reaching out to independents, trying to pretend to be anti-establishment candidate workers. Not now. But he's not even trying.
But Mehdi, he has a pathology involved in his behavior. Yes. I can use that word with you. That most politicians don't. He is an actual amoral agent. As somebody who has studied philosophy for 35 years of my life. He's also
a malignant narcissist. And you mentioned pathology, Chris. Here's another, sorry to do another kind of I told you so moment. Back in 2018-19, Dr. Bandy Lee of Yale put out a book called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. A bunch of psychiatrists analyzed it from different angles. I pushed that book heavily. I had her on my podcast at The Intercept. I went and spoke at a conference she organized. People said to me, this is crazy. This is a left gone over the cliff, like trying to psychoanalyze the president. This violates all sorts of medical rules. Guess what? John Kelly, who you just mentioned, he bought the book. The guy in the White House who was chief of staff was using the book as a guide to his boss.
Look, I do think it's weird for clinicians to want to analyze somebody that they haven't met.
It is weird, but it's a unique, we live in a case of lots of unprecedented moments thanks to Trump.
And he's a pretty obvious narcissist.
On the yes man and the no man.
Yes.
I'm not denying that there were people who said no around it. They didn't say no enough, like you just pointed out. They didn't resign and say their piece at the time. And by the way, even with those adults in the room, he still almost started a nuclear war with North Korea. He still almost started a war with Iran. He still kidnapped children at the border. He still praised neo-Nazis in Charlottesville. He still allowed 500,000 Americans to die, who probably many of them didn't need to die from COVID. So even with that, he was a disastrous, perhaps the most disastrous president of our in modern American history. I'm saying next time around, Chris, there aren't going to be those people. He is coming back with vengeance. 4 years is a long time. He's not the same Trump as term one. He is going to come back much angrier, much more organized, and surrounded by way more yes men and open fascists like the Bannons of this world than he did last time around. I'll give you an example, Chris, just one example. Mike Davis, who Don Jr. is touting as future AG or future senior figure in the administration, conservative lawyer, used to be a Bush guy, gone full MAGA. This guy is on Twitter saying, I'm going to deport Mehdi Hasan to Guantanamo Bay, right? Now, he doesn't have the power to do that even as Attorney General. But those are the kind of people that he and his people want to bring into the administration. It is not Jeff Sessions. As bad as Jeff Sessions was, he was still a conventional conservative.
I understand the concern. I don't believe it. And now you could say, well, you're being delusional. I don't think so. I just think that I'm being swayed by my very long time knowledge of him.
So what do you think is going to happen, Chris? I've laid out my vision. What do you think is going to happen from 24?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure
onwards, he's president.
I'm not sure that he wins.
No, let's assume he wins.
All right, so if he wins, one, does the left create any dynamic like the one we had after the last election? I don't know. Not that it would be baseless, but is Donald Trump, are the people around him capable of rigging? 100%. They're capable of it. So what if we get real proof that he rigged the election and that's why he won? I think he's much more likely to rig an election than it is likely that it would be rigged against him. So Agreed. I got to see what happens with that. Then if he wins, I believe that is so much of what the satisfaction was for him that he may coast from silly media fight to media fight, and he will do a lot of saber rattling against us. I think that will be his main focus. because the Democrats will all fall in line like every out party does.
Unfortunately. What do you think? So 2 questions. What do you think happens to all these freaks around him? The heritage folks, the ideologues, the Bannon. Do you think they just?
He has.
You don't think they have? You don't think they have real clear plans on the social liberal culture wars front?
He is not a heritage. Front? He's not a Heritage Foundation guy.
But they're the ones who are going to be. They're the ones pushing.
They are pushing
whatever kind of agenda
things.
You want to call.
They were very effective with the judges.
Servants.
Yes, deep state stuff, as they call it, which I don't believe in. By the way, bureaucracies definitely have their entrenched issues, but I don't believe in what is called deep state. I believe it's a false negative.
But it's projection, right, Chris? They want it to be a deep state that they can then weaponize. The stuff they say about Biden runs the FBI, Biden has nothing to do with the FBI. That's what Trump wants. We know that. You and I both know he would love to have an FBI.
Right. I think that's a little bit too clever for them. I think that's.
So I'm going to end this here for time, but they do talk for an hour. If you want to go on, it is on the Chris Cuomo Project channel. This was from May of 2024. I find it riveting. So you can absolutely go to check out that whole thing if you want. But there's just so much that Chris Cuomo is blind to that I keep shaking my head. Mehdi Hasan nails. Chris Cuomo is sort of imagines that if Trump wins, which of course he did, it's going to be sort of like silly fight and a lot of saber rattling, no teeth. But I think all we're feeling right now is the teeth. And when you look at Carolyn Levitt and Pam Bondi and the things that Steve Bannon has always talked this way, but Stephen Miller using literally language evocative of Joseph Goebbels, right, from the Third Reich. They sound like fascists to me. Pam Bondi going in front of Congress and refusing to answer oversight questions sounded a lot like a fascist to me, right? So if it looks like a fascist and it sounds like a fascist and it advocates for fascist things, why are we saying that that's not what it is? Everybody has fallen into their lane. So Trump isn't just saber rattling. He's explicitly going after the people who were involved in his legitimate prosecutions. Of course, they're saying it was political persecution. That's what Trump does, right? Accuse your enemy of the crime you are committing or about to commit. He's engaged in very serious lawfare with these corporate, CEOs going after late night hosts and on and on and on, right? And trying to deport all of these people who have protested. Where we are now is absolutely unthinkable, and it doesn't feel silly, and it doesn't feel harmless. It really feels like things are tipping here, and the Supreme Court has continued in green lighting these authoritarian actions. So I think what we've landed with is a sort of a perfect storm where the malignant narcissist is doing what he does best. He's engaging in this lawfare against people who hurt his feelings, and he is tying things up in the courts, and he's suing companies for hundreds of millions of dollars for defamation. And because he knows, as Roy Cohn taught him, that a lot of times it's just easier and cheaper for a company to roll over and settle for some piece of it, which looks like a win for Trump. He gets to crow and wave the money and say, see, I told you I was right. And so all of this, when we talk about the eroding of norms and the eroding of our institutions, this is how the erosion works. Meanwhile, you've got the Stephen Millers and the Russ Votes and the Project 2025 people in there ripping out the bureaucratic infrastructure that are the institutions that Chris Cuomo thinks earlier in this video are going to be the bulwark that hold the tide back, right? That's what they're trying to dismantle, and they're working furiously away at that. And then you've got the Cash Patels and the Pam Bondis that are fervently going after who he sees are his political opponents, right? So You're looking at the legal system, you're looking at the press, you're looking at all of these institutions, and there is a specialized team hard at work, fervently at work, at undermining those institutions. The wealthy, the Elon Musks and the Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos, these people have realized, oh, okay, so we're just going to go ahead and play above the rules now, and we're going to quit pretending that we were ever really beholden to them anymore. And, we'll play ball. I mean, whatever works for us. Then you got the tech bros engaging in the AI fight. And all of this, to a certain degree, was part of the dynamic before. But with a Trump in the White House, what you've got that's new now is a complete disregard for the law, a complete disregard for any kind of norms, a complete disregard for actual governance and making life better for American citizens. He doesn't care about American citizens. I think we're all feeling that now, except for the small percentage of people that have drunk the Kool-Aid and just are part of the cult that he could never do anything wrong. I think all of the rest of us, the farmers, whomever, I think we're all feeling it now. I think it's becoming absolutely undeniable that this is real. This is not idle talk. This isn't a couple of crackpots warning that this has happened in other places. This is a slide, an aggressively pushed slide towards authoritarianism. And I think that they are feeling like there is a shot clock now because Trump is also pretty clearly undergoing a mental decline. So in some ways, he's getting more aggressive and more punitive and taking bigger actions, like literally demolishing part of the White House to build this insane ballroom, right? When people are looking down the barrel of their healthcare costs doubling and tripling, and not having SNAP benefits and on and on and on and on, the measurable suffering of huge swaths of the American people. He's building, literally, you can't make this up, he's building a gilded ballroom for himself, which, as Mehdi Hasan has pointed out, doesn't sound like the actions of somebody who's planning on leaving anytime soon. I find this, looking back at this conversation, absolutely fascinating, and I confess that a part of my mind, I think self-protective part of my mind, wanted to indulge in the kind of rationalization that Chris Cuomo is indulging in here back in May of 2024 of like, it'll suck and it'll be bad and it's not the right thing, but it probably, there will be some limits on it. It doesn't feel that way now. And it's fascinating to me. I mean, Mehdi Hasan has been saying this stuff all along, but going back and rewatching this, he is calling it blow by blow. This is a long video. I know I'm yelling at you, and I that's hard to listen to. So I'm going to end it here, but I'm really interested on this one to hear what you think in the comments. I love reading your comments. I don't respond to all of them, but chime in here. What resonates to this? Let me know what you think in the comments.